and this is how to use Swampert in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. So the first Swampert moveset I'm going to be showing off is my classic Swampert. It's not the best moveset, but it really shows the cool things that Swampert can get up to. It has access to both Counter and Mirror Coat, and as a Water Ground Pokemon, it only has one weakness. 4x weak to grass, so stay away from leaves. Outside of that, you pretty much survive anything, especially with a 100 hit points, 90 defense, 90 special defense, fully defensive invested tank. And the cool thing about Counter is that it doubles the damage that you receive, but most sweeping Pokemon are not going to have 100 base hit points, let alone invested 100 base hit points. So you can take 40% and then KO an enemy with Counter Mirror Coat. Other things happen. Citrus Berry just gives you more effectiveness and more potential just return hits. The ideal scenario is that you just go 2 for 1. You eat a hit, counter, eat a hit, or eat a hit, Citrus Berry, counter, eat a hit, Mirror Coat, eat a hit, finally get KO'd. But hey, you were able to do some pretty cool stuff and just completely shut down the opponent's momentum. And then the rest of the moveset is just coverage. Earthquake, really good. Avalanche, in theory, kind of makes sense, but also doesn't, because if you know you're eating a hit, then you just counter instead, and it's probably going to be more damage than a super avalanche. For the 4 times avalanche, that's also where it gets weird, because, okay, we're going up against a Dragonite or a Salamence that's trying to set up, so hitting them with an avalanche becomes 4x, but we don't get the doubled power off of taking the damage first because they're setting up, but at least it's something to do against them, especially as like flying type Pokemon, for bonus damage, and if counter is like too risky, because I go counter, they go Dragon Dance. Oh no, game is spooky now. If I keep on countering and they keep on Dragon Dancing, eventually I get one shot and then the counter doesn't matter. The ability, we have no water type moves, so I mean like Damp if you can get a hold of it. No one's really running explosion shenanigans, so like the ability just doesn't exist on the Swampert, which is a shame. Other than that, there's also some weird things we can look into, because what if we go for a relaxed nature, and then we go Ice Beam, not relying on the avalanche? We're going to have to take a look at those damage calculations, but this is why Pokemon is beautiful, because it's such a weird game when you get into the numbers, that on the surface, Ice Beam is just going to be 50% more damage than the avalanche if we're not getting the boosted avalanche, and we're going from 206 to 256. So Ice Beam is just straight up more damage if you're just throwing it onto a Pokemon trying to stop their setup, and those are going to be the most common Pokemon to stop setup on. But what about Gyarados? Good question. Now, the EV spread on Swampert might look a little weird to you, but there's an idea here, because you're going to be facing physical hits more often than special hits, or like overall the damage skew is more physical, but technically you don't want to block too much physical damage. That way your counter has the best chance of one-hit KOing the opponent, but you still want to be tanky, so it's kind of like hanging in the balance. And I just like this, because instead of just going like full special defense and then maybe making yourself too vulnerable defensively, you know, this is an easy break point. Use 20 vitamins, done. Here's how you want to do it. You want to max out the hit points, use 20 vitamins on the special defense, and then you just pour 6 in defense, and you're done. Easy EV training legitimately inside of your game. And yeah, that's going to be it. It's a fun set. Makes Swampert a bit unpredictable. Like I said, it's not the best moveset, but still like pretty cool if it works and when it works. However, I feel like the most common Swampert set is going to be something like this, because it's filthy, it's annoying. So we talked about how difficult it is to KO Swampert, and one thing I've noticed in Brilliant Diamond Shine Pearls, it seems like not a lot of people are running offensive grass. So you can just kind of get away with it. And Yawn is filthy. If you play the Yawn properly and you force switches or double Yawn, or they commit and then they just stay in and fall asleep and you find a way of capitalizing on that, it's just really strong. After that, we have Roar and Stealth Rock. So here's my philosophy on Stealth Rock. It sucks. It's bad. Don't use it. All you're doing is giving your opponent a free turn of setup. If you're just going in like, well, the damage calculations say that this turns into one-hit KO after the Stealth Rock's activation, but that also means that you're not in a neutral game state. Neutral game states are the best way of factoring like damage calculations and where to go for strategy and stuff. If you're already assuming a Stealth Rock, so that means you gave up advantage to set up the Stealth Rock, and usually that can be a losing advantage. You lead Ferrothorn, Stealth Rock happens, and then the multi-scale Dragonite goes and sets up a Dragon Dance, fire punches you, and the game's over. Or, anything can happen after that. Unless So Stealth Rock sucks, unless Roar is involved. And this is like, I wouldn't say a new thing, but phasing only gets more and more common. Back in the original Generation 4, I barely saw any like Whirlwind Skarmories or something because people didn't like the idea of having a taunt bait 4 status Pokemon. Now, that's pretty common. And the idea behind Skarmbliss is that you aren't forcing switches. You're making your opponent switch because they can't break the Skarmory, and then they can't break the Blissey, and then after you heal and stuff, and leftovers and all the other madness inside the game, like, they're just always damage negative, especially after a Stealth Rocks and Spikes, or something. But if you give up that setup, and you don't have a way of cleansing that setup, so also Haze works with Haze works with Stealth Rock, stuff like that. If you can't cleanse the setup, then you're just losing. So if you're splashing in Stealth Rocks thinking you're cool, you actually suck at the game. But if you pair with Roar, now you're actually accomplishing something with it, and I hate that it's becoming more common, not just because I'm a setup tank player, but also just because it's a bad strategy unless you have to do this. But then people don't like doing that because you have a Pokemon that's now missing 2 move slots. If you go up against Hyper Offense, you just lose. And now we're not even talking about Swampert, we're just talking about the strange progression of the metagame throughout the history of Pokemon, which kind of folds back into 1 or 2 moves you might incorporate onto the Swampert. But the weird thing for me is that, yeah, phasing, like I said, it's gotten more and more common, but it was still fairly uncommon until, like, Season 3 of the Pokemon Sword and Shield Battle Stadium, where people just were, like, winning so hard with setup in the early days of Pokemon Sword and Shield that in 3v3 singles, people were bringing 2 anti-setup Pokemon. Like, there'd be Trick Scarf, there'd be Roar, there would be Haze, there would also just be taunts everywhere. So, I mean, like, that's a thing. And now the meta is a complete mess because people are terrified of everything. And, you know, Roar is just a really good catch-all that no matter what they're doing, if you can, like, predict the Roar on their setup turn, that's really good. If it's a tank setup to become unkillable, they're not going to be able to damage your Swampert and be threatening enough so you can just roar that away. It's really about just reacting to it. The second the opponent threatens a setup Pokemon, you go into your Roar, and then you just try to get momentum that way, and you just cannot let them take off. Like, people, they used to be arrogant. They used to be like, yeah, I can beat out this stockpile Belly Drum Snorlax. Oh, I can't. Oh, I lose. Now everyone knows. The secret's out. So that means Roar is in, and Stealth Rocks pairs really nicely with that. And the last move can be anything. Scald is an idea. The thing is, if, like, you burn your opponent, the yawn doesn't work. However, sometimes having a burned physical attacker that's threatening setup is more important than it maybe switching out because it's a little sleepy or something like that. Like I said, people don't like the 4 status Pokemon because they're taunt bait, and taunt is common, but it seems like taunt is becoming less common for Haze and Roar, and that's why the meta is a mess. But if you do something like this, it just gives you the complete autonomy over your opponent. Yawn, protect. If they don't switch, then they're just asleep. And if they do switch, you just go, like, if you get super Galaxy Brain into their mind, just set up that vacation home rent-free, dude. You just go double yawn, and now, like, something's eventually falling asleep, and you don't want to keep switching out every time you get drowsy because Stealth Rocks will chip you away if something happens. Like, okay, it's like, okay, Stealth Rocks take a hit, or maybe Bright Powder bails you out of something. Yawn, take a hit, doesn't matter because, like, you're super giga tanky, and then you just go protect, they're asleep, roar, yawn, double yawn because they're switching, protect, and, like, if there's just a scenario where if you're just better than them, they lose, like, half of an effective Pokemon's health off of the Stealth Rocks, maybe even more, and then 2 of them are asleep. You get that much momentum in a Pokemon game, and it's pretty much impossible for the opposing Pokemon to come back from. Once Swampert does go down, you have to be aware that, like, your Roar Pokemon is gone, unless you're running triple anti-setup, because that's just the meta now, and you kind of have to be aware that the opponent can still gain against you without this cheese, but if you use it properly, yeah, it's just over for them. After that, Banded Swampert. Banded Swampert, to be respected. You know why? It's more damage than Garchomp. Wait, nothing's more damage than Garchomp. Garchomp's in a weird place because it only has 130 attack. But only isn't the right word because this thing will neutrally one-shot you on an Outrage, and my goodness, even a Scarf Earthquake hits like a truck. But Swampert doesn't need to care about speed. Swampert's tanky enough to eat that hit, so 178 attack versus a 182. An Adamant Swampert is the same damage as a Jolly Garchomp. That doesn't sound right, but that's how math works inside of Pokemon. And if you're banded, that's just 50% more damage. And if you're torrented, then you're just destroying everything. Now, the band does kind of leave up some vulnerabilities where it's like, yeah, I get locked into the wrong move, but if you use the right move, you just win, and then you can splash in the counter. Like, there's all kinds of moves you can put here, but when I was running damage calculations, I was just, like, thinking on the coverage. I didn't really see too much of a point, whereas counter, I feel, bails you out and catches the opponent off guard more than anything. Like, if you go and just truck them on a waterfall, they might go, whoa, is that Swampert banded? Okay, I gotta keep an eye on that. And then Swampert comes in later and then uses counter. It's like, what? How is that even a possibility? Well, now you're dead. So we got that going on, and since we don't have to worry about speed, 2v2 hit points, 2v2 attack, 4 speed for the creep. And then, there we go. 60 creep is a thing. I don't know, maybe give up a bit more to get a bit more, and then game's funny and weird like that. Yeah, all of this stuff just coming together means that, like, Swampert is one of the strongest banded attackers because it's giga bulky, and it will start one-shotting things. How hard is a one-shot? Let's find out. So, we have a Weavile, which is a 70 hit point, 65 defense Pokemon. Weavile doesn't do anything to us on max hit points, and then we one-shot it on Earthquake with Choice Band, Adamant, and no other shenanigans going on. And if we're in, like, Torrent range, Waterfall also gets really nasty. So yeah, we eat a hit. Knockoff or Icicle Crash isn't putting us into Torrent, but it kind of like shows some weirdness. You know, this is a Life Orb Weavile using its strongest stab move to get 50-ish%. So anything weaker than that, we're a 3-hit KO Pokemon. Which means we're going to be picking up 1+, if not 2. It kind of gets nasty. And then it also depends on the meta. Maybe if Pokemon are, like, kind of slower and bulkier, Swampert at least gets some tag damage before it goes down. Like, that Waterfall is going to wreck a Bronzong or something. So, game's still kind of weird. And we can also play around with numbers. 85-80 is still going to be a chance to KO on the Earthquake. Like, look at that! If a Pokemon is not a dedicated tank, it risks getting one-shot by the choice-banded Swampert. Or it will just straight up get one-shot. If it hits Swampert really hard, Swampert bulks it out and then returns the KO. So that's what it's like, oh, when you look at the damage numbers and compare it to Garchomp, this Pokemon's kind of weird. Like, you don't think about these numbers, but they exist. And, like, is that what's being slept on? I don't know. I personally like this moveset because being able to ruin your opponent's day in this manner is something that's very hard to come back from, but this is just like a Pokemon. Like, this is a real Pokemon that can do strong things inside of a battle, and that's pretty cool to me. Also, with this, I wanted to show the argument for a counter even on the Choice Banded set, because Choice Band Avalanche is not going to be enough to KO a Gyarados. You can do significant damage, and maybe weird things happen where Gyarados takes a little bit of chip as it's setting up, and then that puts it into KO range. But I mean, like, 252 hit point Swampert just survives the waterfall from Gyarados at +2. Now, Moxie kind of gets weird, so, I mean, +3. You still survive +3 almost every time, and that'd be like, okay, so it gets +2, and then KOs your Pokemon is now at +3. That's an unstoppable, unbeatable Gyarados. Actually not. Or if it just goes like +1 into Moxie, or maybe it's running Intimidate because Intimidate's still really strong, or finds, like, if it has +2 attack for any reason, you're still okay as a Swampert. And that's why you just eat that, you counter it, and then the Pokemon that was going to run over your entire team doesn't. And you also maybe have an option or something outside of that. So, yeah, the Banded Swampert, good. However, this wouldn't be a Verlisify moveset video if we didn't talk about a setup moveset for the Pokemon. So, Curse Amnesia. Swampert's got it, and as we talked about, Swampert is tanky, so Swampert quickly, like, if you remove all the Grass Threat from the opponent's team, and they don't have a way of shutting down setup, but like I said, it's pretty common now because of this. People are tired of losing to this, so then they'll do weird things in the game and just try to make it to where they'll never have to worry about it again, but leaving themselves vulnerable to just complete unhinged jaw aggro teams. I don't know. Are we going to be in a cyclical meta forever, or will something be solved? Who even knows at this point? Pokemon's weird. We got Curse, Amnesia, and like, yeah, set up 2 curses, go Chesto, Resto, maybe you need an Amnesia in there. That's going to make you super fat against special attacks. Avalanche, 16 PP, it's not crazy, but this is what we get. And again, like, no water moves. Why no Earthquake? It's a flying type Pokemon. If I spend all this time setting up and becoming unkillable, and, like, unstoppable and just a one-shotting machine, why would I just want to lose if they have a flying or a levitate Pokemon, which is super common. Sounds kind of silly. Same thing for the water. I don't want that stray Rain Dish Gastrodon to shut me down, or water absorb Pokemon, or dry skin or something weird. So Avalanche hits everything neutral, and the 120 base power, that's the same as a waterfall. So if you have a waterfall, but you're pretty much just like getting hit every time for Avalanche and returning damage, that's just the weird thing about unskilled Pokemon players. They don't have the basic comprehension skills and inner monologue to think through how power plays out throughout a Pokemon game. That was the whole thing behind the idiots hating on the Heavy Slam Wailord. Heavy Slam Wailord is going to be a 120 power move in almost every situation, while also being unstoppable because nothing is immune to steel. So kind of the same idea here, and eventually you just get +6 and then you destroy everything because 110 attack is just chilling there. That's pretty cool. And you can, like, the thing is, you rest, eat hits, wake up, attack, and rest, and that's just how tanky you are, and that's why these kind of movesets are crazy. Last thing I want to do was like compare it to the Gastrodon. Like, what does Swampert bring that Gastrodon doesn't? Or why would we not run another water ground Pokemon? What is like the tankiness of, you know, Swampert over the Gastrodon? So we go and bring this back. We have 207, 128, 135 for the Swampert, 218, 120, 113 for the Gastrodon. So Swampert actually tankier than the Gastrodon. And Gastrodon is pretty much used as just a really filthy, just momentum hindering Pokemon against the opponent, but it does have the advantage with the recover, so it instantly gets back half of its health, and it's still a comparable 3-hit KO Pokemon. It can also like stockpile and do its own things and curse as well. So I mean, like, there's similarities here. If you're running Gastrodon offensively, I feel like an offensive Swampert is better. If you're running setup, I feel Gastrodon is better because of that recover. And if you're doing stall, Gastrodon doesn't get to yawn, roar, stealth rock like this because he doesn't have any phasing. So different Pokemon for different goals, but yeah, like the Swampert, if you're like, oh man, Gastrodon, why is it so filthy? Swampert's actually in the same tier of filth, and that's kind of surprising, while also being potentially harder hitting than Garchomp. Alright, Swampert's pretty good. You also can't really understate what this does to a team with multiple setup Pokemon, which again is kind of common, so yeah, like Swampert, pretty good. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching. Welcome back, Wolfpack Rollers here, and this is going to be a competitive relook for Pokemon with the Pokedex numbers 51 through 100, and let's just get started off with the ones I completely butchered. That Rapidash gets Body Slam as a 3rd generation move tutor, most likely not going to have that. Same with Kingler. These Pokemon don't really get Body Slam, and these Pokemon I'm going to be talking about right here, these are not 6th generation legal, and by that I mean these are Pokemon that can't be created by being caught or bred in the 6th generation. That also includes Dugtrio, because Sucker Punch is a 4th generation move tutor, and Golem with its 4th generation move tutor Sucker Punch. Also with Farfetch, for some reason while I was talking about it, I didn't realize that Slash had a high critical hit ratio. The idea of Farfetch was using the crit stick. And now that you have a stab crit stick move, so something I did want to address, and then you still run the same Farfetch, but with Slash, because the most damage possible if you're not hitting a super effective hit. Alright, now let's also look at some of the movesets that I really forgot or looked over or didn't mention, and the biggest one I think is going to be Persian. A lot of people got mad that I did not mention Hidden Power, Technician, Nasty Plot, Persian, because I didn't think it was that powerful. That 65 special attack, not really going to mean too much with a Nasty Plot. Now, 115 base speed. Persian's high speed, very strong to have, and with that, 115 speed, very good speed tier, timid nature. So, special attack, 228. If you use Nasty Plot, that gets you over 450, which is pretty good, but it's not insane. However, Technician boosts mean that you are going to find a good amount of damage. So with this, you use Focus Sash, you set up your Nasty Plot, and then Swift. Swift is Technician boosted. Hidden Power. Hidden Power is Technician boosted. I was thinking you could go with Hidden Power Fire because Icy Wind. You get Icy Wind through Tutor. It means that you don't have to try to worry about a Hidden Power Ice or anything like that. And it's only 5 less base power. Still affected by Technician. Still a Dragon Killer. Still something to mention. Best case scenario is that your opponent, you try to kill off all of your opponent's priority. That way you get 1 or 2 Nasty Plot boosts, and then you just go for a coverage sweep. If you don't want to put Hidden Power on a Persian, it does take a very long time to breed for Hidden Power. You also have Power Gem. Power Gem is going to be good against Pokemon like Charizard. Now, technically, Talonflame isn't going to be good because it has priority, So you can take out Power Gem, Charizard and stuff, or you just go Hidden Power Fire with Power Gem, and this is going to give you some really good coverage, as well as just being a surprising Persian set with that Nasty Plot Technician that I neglected to mention. Next up, we have Alakazam. Now, Alakazam, if you're running regular Alakazam, you're going to want Focus Sash, Timid Nature. If you're running Mega Alakazam, this set works for both of them, you want Modest Nature. That way you're still getting a lot of outspeeds, and you're still doing really crazy amounts of damage. The idea here is Protect. Most likely, when an opponent attacks you, they're going to be using their strongest move, most likely to knock you out. You use Protect, you absorb the move. Next up, you just go for a Disable. They're still going to be wanting to try out their strongest move on you, so you're going to disable it. And then you use Encore. Since you're faster than your opponent, Encore applies before they move, which means they're using their disabled move, and now they're completely shut down. They either have to stay in and struggle, or switch out, and then they eat a free Psychic. So the idea behind this is Psychic. Now, Mega Alakazam has some very strong 2-hit KO potential with neutral hits, so as long as they don't switch into a Dark-type Pokemon, Psychic, switch in, that's more than 50% of their health, then you do another Psychic, that's a KO right there, and until they catch on to you, you're still going to be able to disable moves, you can still lock them out, or you just try to keep converting from there. Then another Psychic means your Alakazam just 1-for-1. If it's Focus Sash Alakazam, you might even get a 2-for-1, or you can just try to disable, Encore, and then set up with a different Pokemon once your Mega Alakazam gets knocked out. After that, with my Mega Slowbro, in my exclusive Mega Slowbro guide, I mentioned Rest Talk, but in my regular Slowbro Mega Slowbro guide, I didn't, and it's still really crazy. That Sleep Talk with Rest means that you can just calm mind, if you get Toxic, if you get Status, you get to rest, and then you have nothing to worry about. Shell Armor means that you cannot be struck by critical hits, and with your stupid amount of defense, it's really hard to catch up. That unless they have Swords Dance or Dragon Dance, they really can't outpace your Calm Minds, and they really can't outpace your damage. If they're trying to hit you special, it means that they can't get a super effective critical hit move that's going to knock you out because of your Shell Armor, and they can't Toxic you because you have Rest. So this is actually really busted. It's like Rest Talk Suicune, but better because you just have a higher base defense, and you're going to be able to set up the Calm Minds really easily, do Scald for damage. The only thing you have to worry about is Water Absorb. If your opponent has Water Absorb, try to remove that Pokemon, and then you just go for the sweep, and now Mega Slowbro is unstoppable. After that, the next 3 movesets are going to have the same thing going on, because I kind of forget about Assault Vest from time to time. So let's talk about Assault Vest Magnezone. Now, you can use Magnet Pull, that way you become a pure, just Steel-type killer Pokemon. Hidden Power Fire means that Special Aegis Slash not going to be able to do a thing to you because Assault Vest, you're going to resist it really well, and then you just go for the Hidden Power Fire. They can't switch out because of Magnet Pull, and that's going to be pretty funny. Other than that, you can just run Analytic. Analytic is going to give you 30% more damage if you move last, and most likely you are, since you are a fairly slow Pokemon, and then you just go for the best coverage options. Flash Cannon, Thunderbolt, Hidden Power Fire. If you're hitting them super effective, or you're just hitting them with strong neutral hits, that's potential 2-hit KO damage, especially with that Analytic, or even 1-hit KOs against more frail Pokemon. With your Assault Vest and natural defensive bulk, it's going to be very difficult to 1-hit KO you, and then you just kind of go for 1-for-1 or even more off of all this damage while getting just some kind of craziness. If you use Magnezone in the late game, you might be able to one-shot some weakened up Pokemon really easily and go for 3 or KOs or something ridiculous, because you're just going to be so tanky from that Assault Vest and hit point investment. Next up, we have Dual Death Calibur's Hypno. Now, I was talking about Hypno, it can be a very strong Pokemon with all the setup options, but it needs Sustain. Well, Drain Punch, Power Punch gives it Sustain, and it also has all the elemental punches, so as a physical attacker, it has really good coverage that it can make use of. So what you want to do with this is run Assault Vest, max out your defenses, and then your natural special defense, going to be very high with that Assault Vest. Run Impish Nature since you're not using special attacks. Go hit point defense investment, and then just go for that Power Punch. After 1 or 2 Power Punches, you can use a Drain Punch, get some health back, Fire Punch and Zen Headbutt, great coverage with a little bit of stab, and you even have Ice Punch as an option if you want to run that. So this is a very surprising set, that it does have a good amount of tankiness, and if your opponent's trying to do setup, you might sneak in a Power Punch, get a little bit of extra damage over them, and then just try to convert off of Drain Punches and Ice Punches, and crazy things like that. So this can be really solid. And then Muck. Muck is kind of the same idea, except this one doesn't really have Sustain. So you can either go with some defensive investment, or just max out, YOLO, go full attack, use a Power Punch and a Gunk Shot. Muck has a 105 base attack. 105 base attack with that Power Punch boosting is going to be stupidly powerful, and because of Poison Touch gives you a 30% chance of poisoning your target. So you use Power Punch, poison them right there. You do a little bit of damage, Poison's going to activate, and then you Gunk Shot. if they aren't a Steel-type Pokemon, you're going to destroy them if it does land. Gunk Shot does have the 80% accuracy, but if it lands, that's very high chance to KO, even on neutral hits, and then you're just going for those one-for-ones that you set a Power Punch, you endure the hit, you throw a KO back, you endure the hit, you throw a KO back, and it's a very high chance of just going one-for-one. Also, Fire Punch, going to be good against Steel types, which are immune to your Gunk Shot, Ice Punch, just for the coverage and everything like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, some extra sets for you guys, as well as some things I did mess up. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a nice day.
Vamos a probar la famosa lima para los pies.
Welcome back, Wolfpack. Real soon, this is how to use Illumise, or Illumise. I just kind of pronounce it however. So if we look at the stats, oh wait, what, you want to hear about Volbeat? Well, I'll go into Volbeat a little later. I just like Illumise more as a Pokemon because I feel it does a bit more, and like I said, we'll talk about that. So looking at stats, doesn't have a lot, but the one thing that we know by now is Prankster Pokemon are awesome, and this Pokemon gets Prankster, so there's your spoiler alert, like, whatever. 65 on the hit points, not the best. 55 on the defense, not the best. 75 on the special defense is a lot more usable. And then overall, he doesn't have much offensive potential. And the 85 speed, while being low, gets covered up by Prankster. It is a pure bug-type Pokemon, so we kind of get to see that it has a good amount of weaknesses, 3 base weaknesses, 3 resistances though. And as long as you're not being threatened by anything flying, rock, or fire, some of those are fairly common, you're going to be in a pretty good position, so it's not the most to worry about. So hopping into Pokemon Showdown, we're going to check out Volbeat really quick. The thing about the Plusle and Minun videos, it took a lot of editing to kind of do 2 in 1 video, just to say Plusle's a Baton Pass Pokemon with nasty plot. Well, Volbeat's the same, except it's actually better than Plusle because Tail Glow +3 instead of +2, so you're Baton Passing 2.5 times special attack. Yikes. And it also has Prankster, so you can kind of just go with your standard, use Tail Glow, Focus Sash procs, and then go for the Baton Pass, or you can kind of prey in your tankiness. I can invest pretty tankily. I'm going to be a hard one-hit KO, like unless it's a super effective hit, not too much to threaten me, set up a substitute, and then go for Tail Glow, then Baton Pass. If there are any other options, like if the Pokemon's really trying to set up, or they're not doing any damage to you, you can just hide behind Sub, throw out Toxic, because the cool thing about Sub is that if your opponent isn't Prankster and they try to status you or something, like a Rotom, Sub against that Rotom, they're not going to have too many options, and then you can kind of play it out from there and you're going to be really good. Toxic as an extra thing, but mostly Tail Glow, Baton Pass, you now know Volbeat. For Illumise, we're looking at a little bit more of a dynamic, that it has a lot more supportive qualities, that can run really well in singles, that its defensive breakdown, while being the same as Volbeat, it just gets access to Charm, and I feel that that's what makes it infinitely more usable. So what I like to do is Prankster setup, you go with as much investment as possible. Since we're going to be using Charm and Confide on this single battle set, I was thinking, well, Confide only drops them by 1 stage, with Charm it drops them by 2, so you might as well have more initial special defense investment, that way you can survive the better hit. Or you can just go like Charm, and now they're doing half of their attack before they even have a chance to attack you. So their attack gets cut in half. You have a decent amount of buff defense by this point, and then you just like Charm, Roost, Charm, Toxic, and if they switch, Toxic, and then Roost, and then Confide, Charm, and you pretty much loop them around while getting leftovers heal and all sorts of things. And this can work out really well. It's a really fun way that they can really only wall you out with Poison and Steel-type Pokemon. And if they aren't bringing any of those, you can either make a team that's strong against Poison and Steel types, another Steel-type Pokemon, switch into that if they try to counter out you, and then whenever they don't have a Poison and Steel on the field, you just start playing random Toxic shenanigans with Roost, and it might work out really well. If we're looking at this from a doubles aspect, Illumise is a very special Pokemon. It's the only Pokemon that has like Tailwind, Prank. So oddly enough, it doesn't get Reflect. Like, if we look at Reflect, it doesn't get Reflect, but Charm. So, in doubles, I was thinking use your Focus Sash to set up Tailwind, and then you can have Protect happen on that turn, and then from there you can try to go for some other kind of support. If you took a lot of damage, because we're going to be also looking at roughly the same investment, maybe try to go even a little more on the defenses, since we're going to be using Light Screen and Charm. So we might not need to invest as much into the special defense, and that's just personal preference. So say you're on your 1 hit point, then you can either say, well, I need to Thunder Wave that threat, just to make sure it might get paralyzed or to try to lock it down, or you can charm out another threat or just set up Light Screen, and it works out for really slow, bulky Pokemon, that since Tailwind's doubling the speed, you can make a Tyranitar really fast and really unkillable real quick. You throw this thing next to a Tyranitar using Dragon Dance, put it up behind a Light Screen after it has like full hit point and potential defensive investment with a little bit of offenses, and it can work out really well. Thunder Wave is going to help out setup, and this is really just a support Pokemon that can do a lot of boss things. It's not like the premier prankster support, but it can still do a lot of work. And now if we look at some other things, gets Confuse Ray, gets Encore. Now instead of Thunder Wave, definitely you could put Encore here. Oh, that Pokemon's trying to set up. Encore it. Good job, bro. Yeah, you right there. Just good job. And then you can lock it in while they're already trying to do things. Since you do have that prankster priority, you can really shut someone down real quick and at least get them on the prediction. Also, Illumise has Flatter. It boosts target special attack by 1 and confuses it. So it's like the opposite of Swagger, but to a less degree. So what you can do in doubles is run this on a Swag Play team, but at least just get the status out there. That if you're running it for that, then you can do like Thunder Wave, Roost, Flatter, Swagger. Now you have Swagger against special Pokemon, Flatter against physical Pokemon. You shut down those physical Pokemon, you foul play out the Swagger, and then then you can use Swagger on the physical Pokemon, but since they're Thunder Wave and they have reduced speed, foul play is going to outspeed and then have a lot of damage. So this would work really nice next to a Light Screen. The way I see it, Light Screen, Reflect, Thunder Wave, and foul play on Klefki, and then this whole like Swagger Flatter setup on Illumise. Maybe instead of Thunder Wave, you could also have Swagger on Klefki as well. But now these Pokemon are covering for each other, they're doing a lot of supportive things, and it can get really crazy. So I was just thinking like extra ways of boosting defenses. Maybe even instead of Thunder Wave, you can go for Charm. Like Charm is just going to reduce their power while they're hitting themselves, and then you can decide to bulk them back up with Swagger whenever you want to. So those are just my thoughts on Illumise. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and that's how you use Illumise.
So I said, let me connect you, but they just kept on typing agent.
Yeah, customers can be complicated.
Welcome back, Wolfpack Grillis here, and this is how to use Wailord. Wailord is a crazy Pokemon that if you actually break it down, it's over 47 feet long and only weighs 900 pounds. So according to Volbeat, it actually has a density lighter than air. And we look at it, it makes sense that it's more of a balloon in stat bulk, that it has almost no defenses, but a ton of hit points. Now, since you do have a lot of hit points, and even with the low defenses, it means you're going to have a high effective health and a high effective survivability. With 90 on the attack and 90 on the special attack, you have a slight amount of usefulness offensively, and then 60 speed. Pretty much you're just going to want to health tank it up before dishing out a decent hit. Looking at its typing, pure water type, not bad at all. You got grass and electric weakness, and that's it. You get a couple of resistances, and water, very strong typing.